jump straight in with your high-level history research project. What was your motivation, and what's the precise research question?
Yeah, so my history project revolves around the question: to what extent did the Falkland Islands War to what extent was the Falkland Islands War pivotal to the fall of the military regime in Argentina? When I was choosing a topic for this project, I knew I wanted to pick something about Argentinian history, as I thought it was a perfect way to look into my Argentinian heritage, but I wasn't really quite sure what to pick. I'd always heard about the Falkland Island War, but it really solidified as the topic of my choice when my father told me that the humiliation of the war and the military regime that was in power at the time were two major elements in my grandfather's decision to move my father and his family to the United States in the early 80s.
Yeah, great. Would you share with us just some of the details about how one would approach a project like this, and what does the IB expect you to do?
Yeah, so the IB, one really cool thing about the IB is that they encourage you to pick topics that you're truly interested in, and they encourage you to use any prior knowledge that you might possess in exploring those topics. So for my case, since I chose a Spanish-speaking country as my country of choice, I was able to use my fluency in Spanish to analyze primary sources not only in English, but also in Spanish. This really showed me the disparities between the sources of the two languages on covering the event in the news, and it showed me the full extent of the Argentinian propaganda firsthand, and it showed me the British bias on the situation. Another great thing about IB is that it requires you to look beyond the essay that you're writing, and it requires you to step into the shoes of a professional in the field of your whatever you're writing about. So in the case of history, it requires you to compare and contrast two sources that you used in your investigation, looking at the origin, purpose, and content of each source, and assessing its value and limitations to a historian. It also requires you to reflect on strategies and techniques that historians use in the creation of papers such as the one you are writing, and which of those strategies you might have used in your own investigation. This really gets you asking questions of how and why. How can we assess the usefulness of a source? Why can there be two different views on the same event? How does my work apply to my general field of study?
Well, if that's not enough, I just have to mention you're one of the individuals that takes higher level math for the IB. So can you share a little bit about what math is like at that supercharged level?
Yeah, so HL Math is ideal for students who are thinking about majoring in subjects that require a lot of math in college, such as math or physics. It goes way beyond most calculus classes, and it requires a lot of independent thought, something that's very uncommon for a lot of math classes. Our projects require you to research and think about areas of knowledge you might not even have known existed, and applications that you might never have heard of. For my project, for example, I started by investigating bit depth and sampling rates in MP3s and other music technologies before narrowing in on the Nyquist theorem and Nyquist frequency, which are two things I had never heard of prior to beginning my investigation. This was an area of music that I had barely ever heard of, and I had no clue that it could be connected to math, so that was really cool.
Yeah. Well, that brings us full circle to music. Well, let's then talk about IB music and what's different and better about that.
Yeah, so I always like to describe IB music as English class, except instead of analyzing novels, you're analyzing symphonies. I think that it requires a combination of analytical and creative thinking in a way that no other class does, as it requires you to be able to identify and analyze musical techniques and elements while also being able to create and play your own music. IB music has grown my appreciation for my art in a way that I was in no way expecting, and it has inspired, engaged, challenged, and prepared me to take music further with me in life.
A polymath, a Renaissance man. Thank you very much, Julian.